Welcome to the Fit Diet Podcast, where we'll learn the processes and habits of healthy eating, exercise, and lifestyle. Food for fitness, if you will, with the founders of MindMuscleMemory.com, Miles Beccia and Greg Rando. Miles' expertise with programs and coaching have led him to training thousands of clients all over for the last 2 decades with enormous success, and he's dedicated himself to transforming the course of fitness and health for many. And his partner Greg has his own unique skill set as a professional in the world of bodybuilding, with the ability to teach and inspire all he comes in contact with. Join me now as we discover the secrets of sticky fibers and proper habits and how to implement the mind-muscle memory lifestyle. Welcome in and thanks for listening. Welcome to the Fit Diet Podcast for part 2 of an episode we had started and began last week on the Mind, Muscle, Memory, Fit Diet Podcast brought to you by M3, whereby we were speaking on the convoluted topic of carbohydrates and the top 3 reasons why carbohydrates are essential to your success in the gym. And I think what we've done, gentlemen, we're speaking as always with the founders of Mind, Muscle, Memory and M3, Mr. Miles Beccia and Greg Rando, breaking down what can be described perhaps as a marketing myth in terms of carbohydrate intake and how they're viewed. Most only see carbohydrates as the one thing that's making them overweight. So we'll dive into that. But first, how are you guys making out with everything that's going on the planet right now? Miles, how you holding up down there in Arizona?
Everything in Scottsdale's been, as it has been in many areas, a little bit tense. There's different things going on nearby and in downtown. But everything's holding steady. You know, no one's getting out of hand here. We just got to, look for a better future as we go along.
Yeah, it's definitely some tumultuous times, uncharted territory. Greg, I know here in our neck of the woods, we're very fortunate, kind of pretty much business as usual, but one only has to take 5 seconds and look at the news to see the unrest and the unfortunate situations unfolding. It's pretty crazy indeed. So we'll take that and use a healthy distraction and turn our focus inward.
That's right.
Exactly. We'll turn that whole scheme around and make it work to our benefit in terms of carbohydrates. Miles, we break down what can be described perhaps as a marketing myth. Again, I'd like you to elaborate on these carbohydrates and the mystery that you started to unfold last week.
Sure. And something just came up those last couple of days where, one of the things coming in from a client is just, pictures and pictures. They're really trying to dial in their plant-based combinations and their sticky fiber combinations because they had such a fright over all the different diets they've done that he's just so like you said, like convoluted. He's so mixed up on why he, how many carbs should he count in these things. And what it came down to was that he kind of got it in the end. He said, so since 2014, I restricted the good foods. He restricted these good foods, right? These plant-based foods, restricted them, and then he gained 20 pounds after 2 years. So it's by 16, he was 20 pounds heavier. Then from 14 to 16, then 16 to 18, he did the same thing. He went on and restricted, carbohydrate this and higher, and restricted good foods, and he ended up gaining another 20 pounds. Ooh. So he gained 20 pounds from 14 to 16 after losing weight. Then he lost weight again in 16. Then to 18, he gained another 20 pounds. And then now here he is 22 years later, he gained another 20 pounds. So I said to him, so are you ready to eat real foods, right? Nutrient-dense foods, plant-based foods, and actually not gain the 20 pounds after 2 years this time? Because you're going to end up looking at he's looking at, if he doesn't do it now, he's going to be over 300 pounds.
And how old is this individual, Miles? How old is he?
Mid-30s.
Oh, yeah.
Mid-30s.
Okay.
And so he said, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. It's the carbohydrates that come in from real foods, plant-based foods, is so vastly different than the foods like that's where we have a list of foods, that you sugar foods, they are carbohydrate foods, but they're so vastly different, and the calories go up so fast when you look at, eating the processed carbohydrates, you processed sugars and processed foods. You just, it's so different in calorie count and no nutrients. So I hope that kind of brings a bit of what we're talking about too. Even the mental focus has to come in, the mindset has to come in here to eat the right types of carbohydrates, essential carbohydrates, really.
Yeah, Greg, we can attest to that. There's a lot of youngsters in the club that you train in, and as well as I do. They go on those fatty type things, and they're not fatty, although they turn out to be, but fad. Like a fad, right? And and it's so important just to educate people. And one of the neat things I think that M3 provides is on the webpage. Miles, you're a practitioner of the virtues you espouse to the population. I mean, one only needs to take a look at you and Greg and say, the penny's got to drop. They have to realize that what you're saying has value and worth.
Yeah, appreciate that. I hope so.
Yeah, it's true, Bobby. And I saw that this week too. I had an experience this week in the gym as well, where one of the guys in the gym has seen me training Tracy Sparks over the last few weeks, and he inquired about personal training, and he's seen the changes in Tracy and her musculature and the shape she's acquired in just a few weeks now, and he was inquiring about personal training and asking me, about how long it would take for him to achieve the goals he laid out in front of us. And I talked to him for a few minutes, and I said, honestly, the changes you've seen in Tracy, they're physical. They're not all due to personal training, of course, because it's 4 weeks. How much change in your muscle maturity, your muscle quality and development can you acquire in just 4 weeks' time? Right? We can make some changes, but I went on to explain to him that it's really what the changes that took place with Tracy are really all due to diet. Her muscle shape and volume increased while her body fat decreased, and he was very curious at that point in time as to how that took place. And I went on to ask him, he said, well, can you look at my diet? And I said, sure. What are you eating for carbohydrates? And he said, well, I don't eat any carbohydrates. I'm on a high protein diet. And after looking at his diet was laced with carbohydrates in the forms of fruits and vegetables. And it reminded me that a lot of times people they're not really clear on the difference between carbohydrates sometimes and the differences in different kinds of carbohydrates, and sometimes not even the difference between protein and carbohydrates. So, after speaking to him for a while about his diet and what was in it but what it lacked, we concluded that his lack of musculature and muscle strength muscle weakness, I should say, and the lack of muscle volume that he was trying to achieve was not only due to his workouts. It was primarily due to his diet. He was depleting his muscle, his glycogen stores, his muscle sugar stores, his fuel stores of muscle energy. And you could tell in his muscles they're a little hollow. He puts in a lot of work and a lot of time, but they were a little hollow and not quite as strong as I saw him perform a couple exercises. He couldn't sustain his energy and his output through his exercises and even his workout. So Sometimes the myth is, that carbohydrates make you fat. You don't need them. I want protein. I want extra protein because my goals are muscle building. But when, sometimes we kind of overlook the role that carbohydrates play in not only muscle energy and output, but the fullness and volume the carbohydrates can provide to those areas.
Yeah, right in the name itself, hydrate, right? I mean, so muscle bellies.
Yeah.
Muscle bellies are they're by and large comprised of water, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but by fueling them carbohydrate, you're going to get the rounder muscle bellies. You're going to eliminate or alleviate that hollow feeling. And you bring up a great point with Tracy. I've known Tracy. For the listening audience, Tracy's a bodybuilder, a bodybuilding competitor, and she's only been at it for, I want to say, maybe 2-3 years, and the amount of improvement, fellas, that I've witnessed her have over the past, say, well, it's the direct correlation to how long you've been training her with her diet and et cetera. But it's just remarkable. Her body composition, and has changed. And you're absolutely correct, Greg, that in that short amount of time, maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks, muscle maturity is not going to happen. You're not going to put on a bunch of size, but her body composition, her body fat, the way it's proportioned as a result of the diet has really kicked in and taken effect. And I just think it's and there's a walking, living testimony to somebody as a result, right? They came up and inquired to you, what are you doing over there? And here come to find out that individual was kind of hell bent on what they were doing, their protocol, right? They were, I don't need any carbohydrates. And well, let's dissect that and addressing it in a user-friendly manner with the way your mindset is. You're very accommodating. I'm sure he's going to be on the royal road to success for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the way you put that part together of the carbohydrate, and it really says a lot for a lot of sports. So we're just talking about the sport of bodybuilding and fitness competitor, but when you look at the athlete who maybe has to run a half marathon or a marathon, they had long years and years ago, just as we get out of college, and it was very intriguing to go through those types of workout programs, and all of a sudden, and also those types of eating programs. They always had this, I got a carbohydrate load. Well, part of that carbohydrate load means that they've been working a lot, working long hours, and if they don't get the fuel source back into the muscles in the form, like you said, glycogen, and along with the water. So the water is held in those muscles with the glycogen. So if you don't have the glycogen, you don't have really good water balance and, the good amount of water in the muscle. So like you said, the muscle is going to constitute a good 70%, approximately, say scientifically, is going to be that muscle fiber is going to be water. And because we got to use it to do activity, right? We're going to use it to do weightlifting, running, whatever we might do. So for sports and for whatever sport we're doing, we need to have those glycogen stores go back up before those events, and back up in a way that our muscles are hydrated appropriately from carbohydrates coming together with the water, and it sits in there. And boy, when you can put out extra calories because you have the energy in the muscle like that from the glycogen stores. So, like you said, Tracy might have actually been able to work out a little bit harder. It didn't change, like you said, her muscle density or her muscle size in a short time. But boy, she could probably work out a little harder, burn off a little bit more body fat, and yet those muscles look fuller all the time because she's ready to go with all that hydration in the muscle and that energy in the muscle.
So true. So true. I mean, what you teach at the Mind Muscle Memory, you know, on your blogs and on the webpage, making those muscle connections, how to train, equalizing, balance, etc. And when an individual like Tracy or anybody so inclined has the work ethic and then gets the simple education on how to consume these carbohydrates, I think their progress is going to be amped up and accelerated. You know, and you do write in your article here, Miles, carbohydrates are not the leading cause of obesity. They are not the leading cause of death, diabetes, or inactivity. Carbohydrates have a purpose, and our bodies need them to function properly if we're looking for a better result. And, you know, it's a great place to start. You know, some of the carbs perhaps that this gentleman who inquired to you, Greg, was eating was the processed things like white bread and, you know, potato chips, French fries, sugary snacks, fruit juices, and these energy drinks that we alluded to in part one of this episode last week. You know, the sodas, etc. These things that are so doctored up, and of course the caloric intake is many times twofold or threefold that of what its counterpart, a vegetable or a grain, bean, legume, nut, or seed are. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot of times the complex carbs, they may be more nutrient dense. They may have more you know, redeeming qualities, or they may have they may add up in calories, but they're usable calories. And in the instance of complex carbohydrates, they digest very slowly. And they're used for fuel because they are digest very slowly, and because of that, you know, we're able to utilize those nutrients for fuel, for output. The carbohydrates that come along with the sodas and the candy bars and the white bread, those are simple sugars. Those are fast acting sugars that just spike blood sugar, and as high as it goes up, it has to come down. It's very quickly, and we get energy, you know, of course, energy fluctuations because of that. And we're not really retaining quality carbohydrates in the form of glycogen in our muscles. We're not able to retain those carbohydrates for fuel and output.
Yeah. Right, it's quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true with it being in the blood sugar rather than being stored in the muscle. Is that what you're implying, Greg?
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember one of the first times a long time ago, probably 30 years ago now, I had somebody said, yeah, try one of these carbo load drinks before you work out. And not sure if I drank the whole thing or just most of it, but my blood sugars, it was like the worst workout ever because my blood sugars were all over the place, and up high, crash down, heart rate up high. You know, I was like, this is not the way I want to sustain a good workout.
Yeah, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this. I've incorporated into my regiment in terms of quality complex carbs sweet potatoes, and am I wrong in assuming that they are just a magical fruit? They seem to deliver the goods, Miles. What do you know about sweet potatoes?
Well, yeah, I mean, that root vegetable is just outstanding for its because it's, you know, like we said, we like to have a lot of different colors on our plate throughout the day, and that one just is so nutrient dense. But for sure, the balance of fiber with sticky fiber being very high in that, and of course, you know, a good idea of that, of course, if people are still thinking about it, is that the outside of the potato, you know, potato skin or the outside of the skin, it's not very digestible because it's so hard, right? So that's a little bit more like what we'd say is insoluble or roughage. You can eat it, but it's just going to kind of cleanse the walls of your digestive system.
So it's good
and
to
not
eat
gel up.
It's good to eat this. It's good to eat the whole potato then.
Well, it is good to have that some of that skin or some of that outside roughage, but it's not going to gel up. Like so if you just eat like the inside is just tasty. It you put it in your stomach and you can literally feel it almost cement up in your stomach, right?
You can. It's cool.
So, but that cementing up in the stomach, I'd say with oatmeal, those sweet potatoes, those different things, when you combine those sticky fibers in there, and then it sits and it gels up and it just stays there, boy, does that sustain you and just make you feel great for hours and
hours.
Plus,
it honest to goodness, it's kind of, maybe, I don't know if Tracy's imbibing with those, Greg, but man, they flatten your belly. They keep my muscles full. They give me that long, sustainable fuel source that's not in the bloodstream per se, but in the muscle bellies. Man, sweet potatoes are the stuff.
Glad you like them.
They're a superfood in themselves, brother. They're good stuff for Superman like yourself.
So, if folks are so inclined, and I would encourage them to do so via the www.mindmusclememory.com webpage, there's an entire blog here that you gentlemen have put together, and it links up to a Harvard study, the School of Public Health by T.H. Chan, and it really breaks down a lot of what we've been talking here, and it's very insightful. It's user-friendly, easy to read. It's a good read, and it's curious. The big takeaway, as we go in order, start the day with whole grains like oatmeal or a hot cereal, and again, getting back to that marketing myth, right? That we're so pounded and blasted with is those sugary cereals, which I love to eat at 2 a.m. A big bowl of Life cereal, and they're so counterproductive. But starting the day, I mean, that's key.
Yeah, just for sure. When you go through your day, I said this a little bit before, that biorhythm of, our body wakes up when the sun comes up, and our digestive starts working because we know we're going to be active all day. So, you really want to get your first couple meals in and be really good to go for the day. So you have those meals are important meals, and to make you feel like you have the energy for your body, for your mind, and to just power through your day.
Now, I'm a proponent of that, but a little off topic perhaps. There's a big, push now for the intermittent fasting, which essentially is taking a normal dietary plan throughout the day of 5, 6, 7 meals depending upon your objective, and cutting it back by one, maybe not getting that first meal into your system, later on in the morning. And I think the theory behind that is to burn excess body fat to fuel your morning routine. Do you subscribe to that, fellas? I mean, what are your thoughts, if we can digress a second?
Yeah, I get some good comments on that. Greg, what do you think?
I'm a somewhat of a believer in extending that cleansing process that the body goes through overnight, and I have my ways of continuing that as I wake up in the morning, with my vitamin C blast and my smoothie with combination of fiber-rich foods, and all promoting good detoxification, cleansing, elimination. But at the same time, the mind and body needs sugars. It needs glucose for functioning, and my brain wakes up quite a while after my body. So I need to fuel my body and brain with a well-rounded meal of combination of plant-based nutrients, incorporating different fibers to give me that long-lasting physical and emotional energy that in that boost, that metabolism boost that really gets me going. So
so does it have a place? Does it, because for instance, and I'm sorry to step on you guys if I am, and I apologize in advance, even for the stupid question, but I think in a when people are so, like I said, it appeals to the quick fix. From what I can gather, look, you do your you jumpstart your cardio in the morning with no meal in you, and you're guaranteed to do this, and that. Correct me if I'm wrong. That can't be sustainable? It may be good for a season or a minute, right? But not long term.
Well, yeah, like Greg just mentioned, it's just not. It just doesn't fit with what you want to accomplish for the morning. Getting your body's energy going, your mind's energy going. There's a certain type of athlete that I always like to sort of bring up over the years that I started studying back, because they have studies on the sumo diet, and the sumo wrestler diet is where they overeat after a long workout in the morning of not eating, then they eat a big meal at 12 to 1, and then they sleep, and then they go ahead and they work out again and try to develop some more muscle strength. Then they eat one or two more times in the evening. Again, they definitely are overeating. They're eating more calories, but they are. But it helps to put on body fat because of that long sustained lack of blood sugar. That it's been shown since the 70s that sumo wrestler diet, you don't eat in the morning. You just start eating after you finish your workouts in the morning at noon, and then you take a rest, and then you overeat again in the evening with maybe one or two more meals. So they're definitely overeating, but the average American's eating 3,700 calories, close to 4,000 calories, a day. And so if you see the average American diet with eating a couple of big meals a day, not eating well at breakfast, then you can understand why 70% of our population is, in a way, looking like a sumo wrestler.
Oh, yeah, that obesity epidemic. Yeah. Yeah, that certainly doesn't appeal.
Yeah, that's not you, Bobby.
Yeah, what's that?
I said, that's not you, though, Bobby.
Not this week. Well, I find the whole subject intriguing. I think that there's a place for a quick fix, but again, I just don't think it's just to build longevity, and it all boils down to we don't live to eat, right, fellas? We eat to live, and it's all about quality of the lifestyle. And I think that by being educated, being properly, informed on the subject of carbohydrates, which has been demonized a bit, and I think that there's a lot of truths that have been kept for monetary reasons, and if we can get our mind around it, get educated, and the way and the place to get educated, as mentioned again, is www.mindmusclememory.com. And a wealth of information. You've got what do you have here too? You've got whole grain breads for lunches or snacks. Now, that's not the white bread, Greg.
Right. No. Yeah, it's a regular plant. The plant that's a whole grain is where it's been taken off of that, off of the plant, like oatmeal or, your wheat, your barley, your quinoa is obviously grain too. So it's what, and over in other countries, there's other ones too. There's a teff in Ethiopia. These are all just grains that when they are stone crushed, you can mix them with water and make a bread, right? So they're whole grain. They're still just off the plant, but it doesn't have very good shelf life. So with factories, then you said white bread, and that's because the factory changes the grain into just a processed carbohydrate, and it doesn't have any grain left on it. So now it has a lot longer shelf life, and that makes for better sales, better products, easier distribution.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
And this is where people get confused when you hear the cliche that all carbohydrates are bad. If I had a nickel for every time somebody said that, I'd be rich. It's just carbohydrates give us energy. They're the main source of fuel for our mind and our body. And they break down into glucose, and they're stored in the muscles and the liver, and for a lot of young kids out there that are exercising and performing sports and athletics and things like that, they're really to understand the importance of carbohydrates. I see a lot of young kids doing the high protein thing because they want to be ripped, really lean, but in the short term, they might see some of those results, but in the long term, it's just going to really affect their performance and their output. And I saw this over the years, competing in various bodybuilding competitions. I a lot of times carb depleted leading into a competition, and without extended background and experience, a lot of those times I wouldn't load up properly, so I'd still be depleted going into those shows, those competitions. My muscles would be, flatter than they should be, and not hydrated like we spoke about, so they're not bursting through the skin. I've had to work much harder to expel, my output was a lot harder to gain energy and output within my muscles. And the muscles, the average, what do they say now? We can store up to 15 kilograms of carbohydrates per 15 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram. So I think I read the other day, an average 175-pound man can store like 350 grams of carbohydrates in the muscles, store another close to 100 grams of carbohydrates in the liver, and another free-flowing 10 grams in the blood. So that's close to what now? That's 450 grams of carbohydrates that can be stored in the body within the muscles, the liver, and in the blood. And if these areas if are depleted or deprived over time due to excessive exercise, they need to be replenished. And they need to be replenished so we have mental focus and we have physical energy and output.
I can attest to that. I've competed numerous times, Greg, and where you're carb depleting, number one, your psyche, it plays tricks on you. Mentally, you're not sharp. You don't have that glycogen, and it's so key for the mind, as well as what you said. You show up, and it's the antithesis or the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. I remember back when Arnold Schwarzenegger said, drink the water. The same with the water depletion. Your muscles again are full, rich with water, and to get them to pop and to get them to be full. I am competing in 10 weeks from now at a local show here at the young age of 57, and I'm doing so all on a sticky fiber plant-based diet. And I'll be honest with you, the energy levels that I've experienced just 10 weeks out again, and I don't see anything changing up to that normal quote-unquote carb depletion scenario a week or two out from the traditional way that I've competed and you have in the past, Greg. I am excited to see how it all pans out leading up to the show and right up to stage present that time. Very exciting to see it happen and unfold.
Yeah, I think you're going to be really excited and pleased with the results, Bobby. If you're eating, like you said, if you're eating those quality whole food carbohydrates,
big time.
Your digestion is going to be on point. Your muscles are going to be, revived with energy. Your output's going to be great, and you're not even going to have to worry about holding water between the skin and the muscle if your digestion's good. I found this out over the last couple of years working with Miles. He explained that to me, and I wasn't quite sure. I didn't quite sure buy in until contest day came, and then I repeated it the next year, and water was no issue at all. So, a lot of factors go into the why the digestion and the absorption of those nutrients. But you're going to be better pleased.
Yeah. Greg got some very good, great compliments the first year out about how you were, I guess they call it dry, or what was it again? They said there you were the most on point with your body fat, and you're so shredded.
Jose Raymond. Jose said I was peeled, right?
Peeled.
And
that's what it was, yeah.
Nice.
coming from them, that was a great compliment. Great to hear. Yeah.
Well, I think
peeled, like you could see every detail. It was just peeled.
yeah, and that's the objective. So I think a lot of these youngsters that do have a short-term success with it, long-term, it's going to be a troublesome scenario. And for the folks listening, you don't have to necessarily be dialing yourself in or up for a competition, but just in the everyday walkabout, workaday world, if you implement the programs that are available, the articles to be read, do avail yourself of them over at mindmusclememory.com, the M3 process. Well, fellas, this has been yet another intriguing conversation. I certainly appreciate your time and your input. Fit Diet Podcast.
Great.
Another one in the books, guys. So cool.
Excellent. Thank you
again,
so much, Bobby.
You're welcome. Well, you've been listening to yet another episode of the Fit Diet Podcast with co-owners of M3 and the mindmusclememory.com scenario, Miles Beccia and Greg Rando. This is your host, Bobby Stein, saying until next time, be good, be well, and take good care. Thanks for listening.